Hey everyone, happy Halloween and thanks for joining us today. We'll get started in just a minute. I want to give everyone a few extra seconds to grab their favorite candy and get settled in. I'm a Reese's or a Milky Way kind of guy myself, but let us know your favorites down in the chat. And if you have any questions, leave those in the chat as well. We'll have some folks in there who should be able to answer anything that you can think of throughout the webinar. All right then, let's get started on our spooky adventure. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I bring you Beware of Zombies, AI Tricks and Treats, Ghost Enrollments, Skeleton Courses, and Navigating a Digital Haunted House. Today we are going to enter the scary world of some very modern problems, looking at the role of AI in both the classroom and beyond. But don't be too scared. We're going to bring some very bright flashlights to ward off some of these evil spirits, spotlight some of the positives, and learn how we can scare off the ghosts in the machine. Our agenda for today is a fog rolls across town, the role of AI in our lives. Is AI a student trick or treat? Are you haunted? Ghost enrollments and the clock fraud threat. Digging up skeletons. Are your courses alive or undead? And finally, Gremlins on the wing. Student data security in the AI era. So let's get started. We'll explore this dungeon together. It's no bold statement to claim that tech moves quickly. We've lived through an incredible era of development over just the past 25 years or so. For most of us on the call, chances are you remember when you first got a home computer or when you first got the internet. How many of you out there had to dial up or collected free AOL CDs? I know that we kept a stack of them around and used them as coasters after a while. And I'm willing to bet that the majority of you now have smartphones and are always connected. And this is something it really hasn't been that long a period of time. But tech has been there in our possession for so long now. It's worked its way into our lives so seamlessly that it's easy to trust new developments when they come along. It's difficult to go back to remembering or imagining all paper schools or workplaces anymore. So when AI comes along, it's not that big of a deal to most of us because we've been growing alongside technology this whole time. There's been a lot of speculation on what the future holds for AI, and we've experienced tech boom and bust cycles before, but skeptic or not, AI is far from a buzzword. It is something that is in widespread use, and despite also widespread skepticism of its utility and the ethics of AI, a McKinsey survey conducted earlier this year, 2025, had 78% of respondents claiming to use AI in at least one business function in the previous year, in 2024. And that's up from just 55% in 2022. So over a 20% jump in respondents in just a couple of years who are now using AI for at least one business function. Respondents who are using AI in 2 or more business functions saw similar jumps in 2024 alone, suggesting that the use cases for AI are quickly expanding as well. So it isn't just text prompts, it is now photos and videos and analysis, things like that. And your classroom is not immune to this. I'm sure you're well aware of it. Seniors in college this year are the last generation to remember what school was like without access to an AI chatbot. ChatGPT launched its first public release in November of 2022, which was during their freshman year. At that time, it only accepted text prompts, it only returned simple answers, but now students can upload rubrics or documents to have AI tailor their work to the course scoring methods, or they could even upload images of textbook pages to try and get AI to solve problems for them. And it isn't just students using this in the classroom. Educators as well, saddled with ever-increasing workloads, are turning to AI. Polling showed that over 60% of high school and early career instructors reported using AI to help them this year, while frequent users report saving several hours per week relying on these AI tools. While many of the respondents said that it's great for course outlines or rubrics, checklists, summaries, there have been accounts of AI slop, our favorite term for the garbage that it generates in a lot of cases, working its way into quizzes and more important course materials. I'll put the article up on screen here along with a link. We can maybe drop that in the chat as well. I don't want to present this as just a horror story, though. Maybe the Twilight Zone is a little more of our speed, a cautionary tale to always consider the human element when taking the leap on these new pieces of technology. This is why we're seeing some of the schools that initially banned the use of AI now roll it out in classrooms. The New York Times pointed out a Miami school district that's both using AI to enrich history lessons. They're using it to impersonate historical figures in a way. And they're also using this to help students decipher what's real from what's generative. And this last piece is really important when it's becoming ever more difficult to separate the two. So it's no longer about Luddites versus early adopters with AI. There's a ton of funding flowing into this space between Silicon Valley-backed programs and even federal initiatives if you're in the US. Microsoft alone has pledged $4 billion with a B of investment in the AI space, AI educational space specifically, over the next 5 years. So with so many leaders from different disciplines hailing AI as the way forward, it's important to not just start using these tools in your school, but get all users up to speed and learn the ways that it could both benefit or detract from learning and student performance in your institution. AI. Is it a student's trick or treat? Our first topic of the day. As AI has worked its way into our lives, there's been plenty of ink spilled about how often and how much students are using it on their schoolwork. A New York Magazine article from May of this year interviewed a student at Columbia University who claimed he used AI for nearly every assignment, crediting ChatGPT with authorship on 80% of every essay he turned in. That student went on to assert that most assignments in college are not relevant. It's a direct quote from the article, and that university was simply a way to, quote, meet your business co-founder and your wife. Sure. A survey of college students conducted in January 2023, just 2 months after ChatGPT launched to the public, remember that was November 2022, saw 90% of respondents use the platform to help with homework. That was just a couple months after it launched. And site traffic also backed this up. Month-over-month visits routinely increases through the month of June for ChatGPT and then dips when schools let out for the summer. The same dips in traffic have been observed every year for the past several years since it launched. This is a slippery slope into an academic world where students no longer think for themselves, but maybe that's a little overblown. Victor Lee, who's an associate professor at Stanford and the leader of their AI Plus Education Initiative, recently wrote an article for Vox where he feels that the standard of cheating has changed in schools, but not the amount of students engaging in these types of cheating behaviors. Now, let's keep in mind, using AI to help you with an assignment may not necessarily be cheating, depending on what your institution's rules are. Student surveys going back to the 1990s that Victor Lee cited showed as much as 80 or 90% of students in some cases claimed to cheat in various ways. And once again, I think it's important to note here that without getting really deep into the survey data, this encompasses a broad range of ideas on what constitutes cheating or cheating behaviors. But putting aside the nefarious uses of AI to get students through the assignments and over those class hurdles, many students are engaging with AI tools to help them when they feel stuck or behind or otherwise unable to complete their assignments. So in Lee's article, he notes that more than half of the students in 2024 were just using it to generate ideas, while 40% were using AI to improve their work. So they're already writing something, creating something, and then they are running it through AI as a way to check, as a way to have a personal tutor of sorts. So it could look like using AI as an editor. It's analyzing and making revisions to essays, or checking their answers, or even summarizing, synthesizing information from multiple sources. So students are using it as a personal help desk. They're relying on the always available nature of these chatbots if they're completing their assignments outside of school hours, or when an instructor or a tutor otherwise wouldn't be available to them. The door does swing the other way, though, with some students being accused of using chatbots to write their entire assignments. Maybe that's just a case of being a bad writer, though. And these kinds of accusations can cause reputational damage to the students, especially if their records show that they've been investigated for any kind of misconduct. And contributing to this are the wildly inconsistent standards varying between courses and instructors and schools that are still lagging on implementing AI use policies. Another Vox column, which a university teaching assistant wrote into, said that AI-generated writing is so ubiquitous that to escalate every suspected instance would make dozens of accusations against students for basically every assignment. Also contributing to the dilemma is that our education system was, quote, never designed with generative AI in mind. But that may actually help us out, though, as we try to develop the tools and data points that can evaluate how much students are taking advantage of their new online helper. And IntelliBoard has a number of data sets that can shine the light on this dark room, on this ghost in the machine. So the first thing I want to look at are some tools for instructional designers and, of course, administrators and instructors to see how students are interacting with their courses. And the first report that I'll pull up here is our activity performance dashboard. And what this is going to show us is our visits, time spent, and participations across activities for all learners in a course. And what we can discern from here is how much time are students spending in the LMS on various activities, what activities are they maybe spending more or less time or making more or fewer attempts on, and how can we use this information to better design our courses in the future. A quick overview of this dashboard. We have our activity visits and grade correlation. So here we try to correlate the number of visits that a student makes to an activity with their grade on that activity. We have our activity time spent grade correlation, which does the same thing, but for time spent on a given activity versus the grade that they received. And then we have the participation and grade correlation, which correlates the number of participations with their grade in the course. Below that, we have some cards that show us our average visits for a given course, the average time spent, and the average number of participations. So we can filter this down to a specific course or multiple courses, or even specific activities if we want to look at that. And all this helps us determine how long students are spending in the LMS and how much effort they might be putting into assignments. Now, this does, of course, rely on you having the LMS set up in a certain way to track all this information. But what we want to try and see from this is, are students getting a certain grade level based off maybe one visit, one participation, very little time spent, showing us maybe that they are copying the assignment out of the LMS, putting it into an AI tool, and then just pasting that response back into the LMS? Or are they sitting there and working on a quiz? Are they working on a forum post? Are they trying to write something meaningful in the LMS? So that's just one way that we can track some of these metrics and draw some conclusions, or draw some areas that we can look into for further investigation. Moving on. Are you haunted? Ghost enrollments, a fraud nightmare. Is your school haunted? Maybe some of you are located on an old enough campus that actual ghosts are a possibility. My own alma mater, Fairfield University, has such tales circulating that the spirit of a nun wanders the 4th floor of Dolan Hall. And those stories may be good enough to scare a gullible freshman, but the apparitions that we're concerned with here are much more of a threat to your school than a spiritly nun. Ghost students are sometimes called synthetic enrollments, which should delight you if you're an Alien or a Blade Runner fan. These are falsified or stolen identities that are used to register for courses and steal financial aid dollars. This can push actual students out of the courses they need. It can lose funding for those students and for your school. And it can jeopardize future funding as well. Some advanced scammers operating these schemes have started using AI to fake participation in courses as well, though even something as simple as scoring a .edu email address can pay dividends for them without ever having to fake participation in a course. Now, in the United States, the Department of Education recently launched new identity verification requirements after finding 150,000 suspect identities that applied for federal aid over the past school year. $90 million was disbursed to ineligible students, and a third of that, some $30 million, apparently went to identities that were stolen from deceased individuals. So, in a way, actual ghosts populating courses. Ventura County community colleges in California had over 21% of applications in the 2025 calendar year flagged as fake applications. And smaller school districts got hit harder, with some seeing over 50% of their applications flagged as fraudulent in the Golden State. And community colleges in particular are susceptible to these kinds of attacks. Their goal is often maintaining low barriers to entry. They often accept all eligible applicants and have little or no fees for applications. And unfortunately, they also typically lack the staff and IT infrastructure to fully combat this level of fraud. And it leads to a number of different methods that we need to use for ghost busting. So some schools are opting to look for the usual fraud markers in user information on applications, things like IP addresses that come from abandoned locations, or even eerily similar phone numbers that are just one digit or one character off from dozens of other phone numbers on applications. At one college that I found in an article, more than 400 financial aid applications could be traced back to just several phone numbers. And in a strange full circle moment, thinking back to what I mentioned about it being hard to imagine manual processes or writing things on paper, one school in Michigan now manually reviews suspicious applications, which is kind of funny considering that it probably wasn't so long ago that they switched away from a manual review of applications in the first place. And some schools are even using AI, though it's difficult to find data on how. They're reluctant to share information on what they're actually looking for and what they're actually doing with it for fear of giving better ideas to these scam rings running these operations. Traditional ID verification methods are difficult, can be difficult for teens and early 20-somethings, though, who are trying to enroll for these sorts of schools. They might not have credit cards. They probably don't have work emails. They don't have property records that can be verified by third parties. And officials at these schools that have been hit by these kinds of attacks acknowledge that the scammers are quick to pivot as well, often finding new angles of infiltration. This could mean enrolling in courses that don't have prerequisites or overwhelming a system by submitting thousands of applications at the same time. And these application spamming attacks usually come during off hours or even holidays when staff is at a minimum, so it further strains the system. Well, luckily for you, IntelliBoard ain't afraid of no ghost. Much like our Title IV eligibility reporting, we can leverage these same student engagement and submission data sets that we use for that to trap these specters, these ghost enrollments, and put them into containment before they bring Gozer the Gozerian to a campus near you. So let's take a look at some of our first submission monitoring and our enrollment verification reports here so we can see what to look for on these data sets. First up, we have user course enrollment verification. Very simply, this shows us all users enrolled into courses in your institution, along with a URL to their user profile in the LMS, their email address, their SIS ID, their system ID, the last time they logged into the system, and then the course, more information about the courses that they're enrolled in. What we can do here is just see if we have suspiciously similar email addresses, usernames, if a user hasn't logged in after enrollment. This is a very quick way to just tell if our users that have enrolled in courses are actually accessing the system. We can also add data to this if we're using a third party, say we want to upload more information from the SIS, we can do that and match this information to student data from the LMS as well. So if you want to do something like look at addresses or phone numbers, we can bring that data in and match it up to this report as well. And we can look for those things like those eerily similar phone numbers or strange email addresses that don't make sense. So these are all options on a quick way to see if we have ghost enrollments in the system. Now, like I mentioned, we've seen some examples of these scammers using AI per se to fake participation in courses. So how can we tell that? If they can log into the LMS, if they have a login after enrollment, how can we tell if they're actually participating in a course or not? Well, we've got assignment submission reports that help with that as well. Our first submission monitoring dashboard combines missing learner submissions with first learner submissions. So at a glance, we can see all the users who have not yet made submissions to a course, or all the learners that have made submission to courses and the activity that they submitted for. So using this, we can see if we have enrollments that haven't participated yet as of a certain date in the term, or if they have participated, what kind of assignment have they participated in? This kind of data would be useful if, say, it is an easy assignment to fake, if it's something like a multiple choice quiz, versus something like a forum post where they would need to actually write something out and have that commented on and looked at by an instructor, something that's fairly easy for a real human to tell if the student is participating in the course or not. So these two dashboards are just two easy ways that we can figure out if an enrollment is real, what that user's information is, and then if they are participating in a course. Now, beyond that, if it's a little later in the semester and you're concerned about this sort of thing, we can look at some more activity reports that show learner progress. So theoretically, a learner that would be AI only would not have very good course progress, but that's probably an issue that we can look into a little down the road. All right, moving on to our next topic. Digging up skeletons. Are your courses alive or undead? Zombies are among us. They are reanimated and shambling through the LMS, and they hunger for course credits. But don't go barricading your office door just yet. This isn't The Walking Dead. We can help you figure out where those zombies are and hopefully cure them before they overrun your campus. So the most important attribute for online courses, the one that distinguishes them from correspondence courses and opens them up to Title IV funding, is the regular and substantive interaction between instructors and students. RSI metrics and specifics have not been explicitly defined by the Department of Education. Many schools and school systems have clearly defined guidelines on it. So these guidelines help maintain compliance and ultimately funding. So while there's no overarching rules about it, a lot of places have their own. How do you ensure that RSI is happening at scale? That instructors are providing timely and crucial feedback to learners, and that learner questions are being addressed and group discussions are being facilitated, or that assignments are given thoughtful critiques and these critiques enable learner improvement. We've heard some nightmare tales as well of instructors that set their courses up to run automatically. They auto-post in forums and announcements. They use self-grading quizzes as the primary form of feedback. And we've heard apocryphal tales as well, including the legend of an instructor who was injured during a semester and wasn't noticed until the students started raising the alarm about their absence. And in that case, it was due to their otherwise stellar presence being missed by their students for so long. But what if we had ways to flag that before it becomes an issue, and to ensure that our instructors are following RSI and not just setting up this zombie course to move along without any input? Well, one of our goals with IntelliBoard is not just to look at student participation in the LMS, but to highlight how everyone is participating as expected in their courses. We've looked at some of the student engagement reports that root out fraud, but we can also observe instructor engagement too. And we can set this up for different levels of the administration, so you can break these reports down for department chairs or deans, or look at it overall if you're the school admin who wants a holistic view of your institution. Let's hop back into IntelliBoard and take a look at what we've got. So here I want to look at the instructor behavior dashboard. This combines our needs grading chart with the instructor daily presence chart, And below that, the instructor course engagement summary and instructor course activity engagement detail tabular reports. Bit of a mouthful. Let's walk through them though. So the needs grading chart shows us at a glance how many assignments an instructor has outstanding that need to be graded. This is broken down by course in this report. We could filter it by instructor, enrollment status, the type of submission, or even the date, depending on how granular we want to get with this. And that will show us at a glance if an instructor is not paying attention to assignments that need grading. Now, of course, if things have just been submitted, give them a couple days to work it out, all right? Instructor daily presence, on the other hand, shows us a grouping of instructor daily page views over a 4-week period. So this should show us just how much time an instructor is actually spending in the LMS and how much they are at least navigating around. So once again, a data point that by itself doesn't necessarily tell us much, but could highlight an area for investigation. Moving down to our course engagement summary, we can see the course name as well as a link to that, the instructor responsible for that particular course and section, a direct link to their email, and then more granular data about their participation in the course. So we get their last access, the number of learners that they have, if the learners are accessing this course, the average course grade and submission averages, as well as total visits and time spent, with the ungraded submissions highlighted here as well. So we have an average of ungraded submissions over the past week and the oldest ungraded submission. All of this giving us a detailed picture on how not only are the instructors participating in their courses, but also if students are being successful in those courses. Below that, the instructor course activity engagement detail, that is always going to be a mouthful whenever I try to say it, boils down the average number of visits that an instructor makes over the past week, the average time spent of the instructor over the past week, and then their first and last access in the course as well. So all these things, once again, not giving us the definitive an instructor is good, bad, or indifferent, but giving us ways to investigate. Say if we notice trends, dips in performance, students who are maybe unhappy. All these things can be investigated and borne out here in the data. So let's take a look at maybe one other report that we have that could shine some light on this scenario. A relatively new dashboard that we've put together is the grading health dashboard. And what this shows us is the number of instructors, or a list of the instructors who have fewer than 90% of their assignments graded in their course. This is the instructors with less than 90% here. We have the percent of graded submissions they have, the days since the last graded submission, and the average time to grade a submission. Next to that, we have the list of instructors who have over 5 days since they have last graded a submission. So showing us if an instructor has been in the LMS and been paying attention to student submissions over the past work week or so. And this shows us the days since, the percent of graded submissions, and the average time it takes them to grade a submission. And below that, we have the instructor course grading summary. So here we have name of the course, the instructor, a direct link to their email, and then some other data such as the last access, the number of learners, the last access of any learners, and then some averages such as the days since the last graded submission, the percent of graded submissions, the average time it takes to grade. And moving forward through this, just more submission data. So number of submissions, average number of ungraded submissions over 7 days, and the average course grade and time spent by the instructor. This is the total time spent by the instructor. So all these, once again, areas for investigation. They are ways for you to pull up this data and see at a glance if instructors are participating in their courses as expected. Okay, Our final topic for today, Gremlins on the Wing, student data security in the AI era. The last point that I want to touch on is more cautionary tale than ghost story or zombie story, skeleton story. We don't like gremlins in our data. And with IntelliBoard, we've spent a lot of time making sure that what we bring in from the LMS is correct and accurate. But as I mentioned earlier, AI chatbots can now accept uploads. And certain unsuspecting users have indeed uploaded student data for AI to analyze. This introduces a plethora of issues, as you can imagine. Dozens of little gremlins that can have unforeseen consequences. Not just from feeding them after midnight or spilling water on them. First, how do we know that any data analysis that the AI performs is correct? A few weeks ago, I was trying to get ChatGPT to teach me how to code a site. I have very limited knowledge on coding. On site building, I know a little bit of HTML and CSS. That's about it. I know nothing about databasing, backend, any of that. I prompted ChatGPT to treat me if I was a total beginner who had no idea what I was doing, which I kind of am. It didn't do that at all. I got some valuable instruction. I got some valuable tools that I should sign up for and use and interconnect. But after several hours of messing with this, all I had were these accounts to a few different platforms and a whole bunch of error messages that were generated from trying to get all this stuff to mash together. And I don't relate this story to say that AI is bad at teaching you something. I have been using it over the past several months to a year to make my instructions better as an instructional designer. I want to know what ChatGPT misses when I ask it to give me a list of instructions for something. It's just to highlight, though, that without some underlying knowledge of what you are doing, that vibe coding or vibe analysis, as people might want to call it, is not something that we should blindly trust. And more important, though, than that are the data privacy concerns. AI requires resources to train on, and if you read the terms of service carefully before using these tools, you'll often find that they train on things you ask it, the data you give it, and your responses to it after it gives you an answer, right? So uploading potentially sensitive or private student data opens you up to liability issues, especially if that data ends up being used or leaked in a data breach. So students have been risking giving up their intellectual property by having AI do their assignments, but we also run the risk of giving up students' right to privacy if we're using AI tools to try and analyze their responses or our course data. There are some platforms out there that are created specifically for education that will not train on student data. They ostensibly are compliant with student data standards. IntelliBoard is, of course, compliant with several international data privacy and security standards. And not only do we provide the data analysis, but we do have several types of predictive algorithms as well if you do want to incorporate machine learning into your data strategy and go for more predictive than descriptive or diagnostic kinds of information. We can train on historical LMS data to find common ground amongst your most successful students, or we can use something simple like standard deviation metrics to calculate students who are performing above or below course standards in real time. What we do with this is anonymize the data that we train our predictive models on and do this processing on secure servers. So that means student data is not going to be used for AI to train on. It should not be implicated in a data leak from an otherwise unsecure platform. We have been through these rigorous certification practices so we can keep your data secure. Great. Well, I feel happy having led all of you through the dungeon of AI and our scary new technological future. We're back out in the daylight here. Hopefully the ghosts are behind us. Remember, these things can't hurt you if you don't let them. So I appreciate all of you joining us here today. If you have further questions or want to check out other resources on IntelliBoard or any of the things that we've mentioned here, we have some links up on the screen for you. We'll also send out the recording afterwards. And as always, we're here to help you get the most out of your student data, help you fight fraud, help you improve student retention and instructor efficacy, and all these things that AI could do. We've been doing it for years. So we look forward to continuing to help you into the future. And I thank you for watching and joining us today. Good luck out there. Happy Halloween. Have fun. Bye, everyone.